Okay, good morning everyone, and welcome back to the Shisha Zechiros, the 6 Remembrances. We are starting today the 4th one in the list of 6. And of course, we don't believe in coincidence. We believe that everything happens at the right time and for the right reasons. And of course, as we are holding on almost the eve of Shavuos, which is the time that we received the Torah, we already learned all about that. Today, we begin the greatest atrocity that Klal Yisrael committed after the Torah was given, and that is the Chet HaEgel, that is the sin of the golden calf. That less than or 40 days after the Jewish people were standing by Har Sinai, and in fact they were still standing by Har Sinai when all this took place, we go from a nation who hears the voice of Hashem, has a level of nevuah, prophecy, that is above and beyond anything that any nation has ever experienced before. They hear HaKadosh Baruch Hu's voice, they understand that this is the Nasiv Nishma, the greatest gift that mankind could ever receive from Hashem himself. And before they know it, they're dancing around a golden calf, and it looks like almost that they're worshiping and serving it. It looks like they're pinning their faith in the golden calf, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu and his Torah are out the window at that point. Moshe Rabbeinu is the leader that they fear has died up on the mountain. And apparently, if you look at the picture that is painted in front of us, in the basic words of the Chumash, it looks like they become a nation that reverted, only 40 days after the Torah was given, a nation that reverted to Avodah Zarah, to idol worship, which of course is extremely hard to understand or even to believe. How is it possible that the nation which went through all of the miracles of Mitzrayim, they went through the Kriyas Yamsuf, the splitting of the sea, they were already living in the Midbar for those 50 days between Mitzrayim and Eretz Yisrael, they were living in the Anani HaKavod, between Mitzrayim and the Har Sinai. They were living in the clouds of glory. There was man that was falling down from the heavens. There was the bear Shel Miriam. There was the wellspring of Miriam to give them water. They were protected from all of their enemies. They saw a pillar of fire in the nighttime, and they saw a cloud in the morning that would take them where they had to go. They were living with Hashem. They were climbing up the ladders of spirituality during the Sfira Sa'omer, one rung at a time, to become the 49th level of Kedusha by the time that Shavuos came around. So it's very hard to believe that a nation that was on such a high madrega, such a high level in the world of Ruchnius and the like, could have made such a colossal mistake and an error where they miscalculated exactly when Moshe was supposed to come down from the mountain. We'll speak about it later. And they got nervous and panicky and anxious, and therefore the first response is, let's make some Avodah Zarah and let's start worshiping idols? It's obviously very difficult to understand that that's the story that is unfolding in front of us. It's too difficult to believe that Klal Yisrael just sunk to such a lowly level at that point, after they were on the highest of heights. How does that work? So I want to read to you first the pasuk that this remembrance is based upon, and we'll have to see the psukim that are around there so we can understand why it is representing what it represents. And then whether it's going to be today or the next time or two, we'll have to get into the entire story of the Chet HaEgel, of the sin of the golden calf, to understand what was going on, how Klal Yisrael could do what it was doing, and the tremendous punishments that HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought to them, because he felt, obviously, whatever level the sin was on, this was total destruction of Maimed Har Sinai, the revelation of Har Sinai. It was the abolishing of all of that Klal Yisrael stood for at that point in their history, and therefore HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, no more, this is not going to work. And to the extent that Moshe Rabbeinu not only breaks the luchos when he comes down from the mountain and sees the Jewish people dancing around the calf, he breaks the tablets, they smash into many different pieces. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't gasp in shock. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells him, Yasher kaichacha kasher shibarta, Yasher kayach to you, Moshe, strength to you, that you broke my luchais, the tablets that were hewn from a heavenly stone, were written with my finger, which what I was waiting for 2,000 years since the world began. Yasher kayach, you did the right thing. And I'm not upset that they're lying there in shambles right now. I wouldn't want it another way. So we have a lot to discuss. We have questions that we have to deal with over here to try to make more sense of one of the most mysterious actions and episodes in the life of Klal Yisrael that we find in the Chumash. So if you look in the Torah, this is in Parshas Eikev, which is in Dvarim, and it's Perek Tes, it's the 9th chapter, and we're starting over here by Pasuk Zayin. Now really the truth of the matter is, it's important to note that before we get to Pasuk Zayin, number 7, Moshe Rabbeinu has been chastising the Jewish people because he calls us, the famous words of the Am Kshei Oref, we are the stubborn, stiff-necked people. And Moshe Rabbeinu is coming to entreat us as he's, remember, this Sefer Devarim is coming at the end of his life. He's in the final days of his life and he's leaving off his final charge to the Jewish people. And he wants them to understand that he's going to leave the world. Yehoshua is going to carry them into Eretz Yisrael. It's not going to be just a simple walk in the park. There's always going to be challenges that the Jewish people have to go through. But he wants them to know, learn from your past mistakes. You were in the Midbar 40 years because you made mistakes. They didn't have to be in the Midbar for 40 years. They could have gone in much earlier. But because that you are the Am Kshei Oref, you are this stiff-necked and this stubborn people, which means that you don't take orders and you don't take advice or direction from HaKadosh Baruch Hu or his sages very easily. You're constantly worrying about yourself and your own selfish desires and the like, and you get caught up in the worldly things of this world, and you waver in your emunah, and you go through nisyonos, challenges, and you fail and you fall and you give up hope. Says Moshe Rabbeinu, you got to know that you're about to come into Eretz Yisrael. Get rid of this attitude of the Am Kshei Oref, of this stubborn, stiff-necked people, because it's not good for you. It is not a healthy way for a Jew to exist. And he comes here, Moshe, in Pasuk Zayin, and he says, Zechor, remember, Al Tishkach, do not forget, Eis asher hiksafta es Hashem Elokecha b'midbar, how you angered Hashem, or you started up, you provoked HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the Midbar, in the wilderness, from the day that you left Egypt. Moshe Rabbeinu adds over here, don't think that it was only when you did sin by the golden calf. Don't think that it was only when you did something colossal and monumental. Rather, from the day that you left Mitzrayim, after HaKadosh Baruch Hu made nisim upon nisim, miracle after miracle, and you should have just accepted HaKadosh Baruch Hu's sovereignty, and you should have put all of your trust and belief in Hashem, and not worried and tried to make any shtick over here that the Jewish people do. Nevertheless, says Moshe Rabbeinu, from the very day that you left Egypt, until you've arrived at this place. Remember, this is the end of 40 years of travels in the desert. And Moshe Rabbeinu is telling the Jewish people, from day one until day of 40 years, whatever you'll do the math, how many thousands of days that is, Mamrim heyisem im Hashem, you have been rebellious with or against HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What a wonderful praise Moshe Rabbeinu gives to the Jewish people as he's about to depart from this world. You know what you are, says Moshe. You ingrateful people that HaKadosh Baruch Hu took out of Mitzrayim. From day number one, you're already kvetching the water, we're hungry, we're tired, people dying, it's hot, the road is long. Let's go back to Egypt. They gave us cucumbers and watermelon when we were there. What are we doing over here? Then you had a series of meraglim, of the spies, and you had this fighting over here and complaining about food over here. But the main thing that we're going to begin to describe, says Moshe Rabbeinu, is that sin that was the most destructive at the point that it came, the hate that you did that ended up undermining everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did for you, with all the miracles and the salvation and the rescuing from Mitzrayim and bringing you to Har Sinai. So the Torah says very clear over here, you are an Am Kshei Oref, you are a stiff-necked people, and part of being stiff-necked is you are Mamrim El Hashem, you end up rebelling against HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and you are a nation, as the pasuk says over here, you are a nation that has angered and provoked HaKadosh Baruch Hu the entire way in the Midbar, in the wilderness. The Sforno writes on this pasuk, what is Moshe Rabbeinu hinting to? Where do you see that there's any hint over here to the Chet HaEgel? And he writes, V'yeyid ala yoischa am kshei oref. Moshe is testifying upon the Jewish people that they are a stiff-necked people. Kine chazartem lahachziv pam achar pam. Look at you, says Moshe. Time and time again, you provoked HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You jumped in a places where you should have been passive. You started up with Hashem. You were rebellious with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and you did it pam achar pam, time after time. Kekelev shav el keo, like Shlomo Melech writes, King Solomon says, I believe it's in Mishlei, and that is like a dog who returns to his vomit. Yeah, the Rebbe Yoina explains over there on that pasuk that a person that returns to sin, a person who sins again and again and again, they are like a dog who returns to his keo, to his vomit. Dogs, we know, I'll try to save the gory graphics over here. Dogs will eat basically anything that they can get their teeth on, that they find on the ground. And they will sometimes eat the most disgusting things that is nauseating for a person to watch. But what is the most disgusting? A dog goes and he eats something that doesn't agree with his stomach. He eats some old, moldy, I think as Rabbi Victor Miller, I heard him once explain, he goes and he eats some putrid sausage off the ground, hits his stomach in the wrong way, and he ends up vomiting everything up on the ground. The dog walks away, and he begins to lick his wounds, so to speak, but then suddenly when the stomach ache goes away, he is once again hungry. So where does he go to find food? He is the dog that returns to his vomit. He goes back to that vomit that came because of the sickness that was in his stomach. He goes and he laps it all up again. Pardon my graphic description over here, but I want you to understand what the Sforno is saying. Who could imagine anything more disgusting than a dog going and eating his own vomit after that's what he got it because he wasn't feeling well? And yet a sinner does the same thing. Says Mishlei, the way Rabbi Yoina explains over there, is that someone who sins, and their sins are terrible things, and that's known, and then they go back and they regest or they ingest once again sinful behavior. So you're like a dog who's going back to its keo, to its vomit. It is disgusting. You're just going back to the same things that you did wrong again and again and again. Says the Sforno in the Chumash over here, Klal Yisrael, you am kshei oref, you stiff-necked, stubborn people. You sinned once and you came back and you sinned again. You sinned again, you came back another time and you sinned again. You just keep eating your own vomit from the sins that you do. Ava pisha b'chol pam ra'isem es musa Hashem al Elokeichem, even though every single time that you did an Aveira, you saw how Kodesh Baruch Hu mustered you out, he rebuked you. V'as Gadlo, you saw the greatness of Hashem, he brought punishment after punishment on the Jewish people. He redirected their pathways. He brought enemies to come and pounce on them. So you recognize, didn't you recognize, Klal Yisrael, all the years you were in the Midbar, every time that you sinned, Hashem came and he got you? And yet you're so stubborn, and you're so obstinate, and you refuse to listen to the Rabbi Shalom. You just kept repeating the same sins again and again and again. And therefore the introduction to the Chet HaEgel is that Klal Yisrael is an Am Kshe Aref. We are very firm in our obstinacy, and we refuse to listen to the Musa, to the rebuke of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We refuse to examine our ways. We don't understand what it is that we are doing wrong, and therefore again and again and again, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to come and clap us on the head, try to wake us up, to make us realize what's going on. Now, because that this is your nature, says Moshe Rabbeinu, that is why you ended up doing the most heinous crime spiritually that any nation could possibly do. And that is what the pasuk now comes to allude to, and it says, "Ubechorev hiksaftem es Hashem." On Har Chorev, which is Mount Sinai, you provoked and angered Hashem. V'yisanef Hashem bachem lahashmid eschem, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu was prepared at this point. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was prepared to destroy you and wipe you off the face of the earth. What did we do at Chorev? We were like malachim, like angels. We were Nevi'im, we were prophets on the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. We heard HaKadosh Baruch Hu say, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am Hashem your God, believe in only one God. And lo yelim acherim, there should be no foreign gods in front of me, no avodah zarah, nothing. So we were certainly beloved. We said, Nasiv and Nishma, the Malachim are the ones who sang out and rang out in the heavens. Megillah Razeh, who revealed the secrets of the Malachim, of the angels to the children of Hashem, who told them that you just do Nasiv and Nishma. You don't even think, you just go and you do. That's angelic actions. Angels have a mission and a task that they have to fulfill in this world. They don't ask Hashem questions, they do their job. Who revealed the secret of the angels to the Jewish people? That it's not our question to ask Nishma v'naseh. Maybe we should learn first and then we'll do it. No, you're giving us Torah. This is our mission. This is our task in the world. We don't have any questions, Rabbi Nisham. We're ready to jump in and go. Now that being said, Klal Yisrael on such a high madrega, such a high level, it makes it all the more impossible to understand what in the world was taking place by Har Sinai. Why is it that the Jewish people ended up falling into the greatest trap of all times, and they sinned by the Chet HaEgel, the sin of the golden calf? So the Psukim, we're not going to go all the verses over here, but the Psukim go on. And Moshe Rabbeinu painstakingly, remember the Torah never repeats itself unless it's necessary. Moshe Rabbeinu goes through all of the details of the story of Maimon Har Sinai, and he explains how much effort, how much work went into that. Besides the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu came down from the heavens and he planted his Shekhinah on Har Sinai, which itself was a miracle. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is above and beyond. He doesn't manifest himself in the physical world the way that we would want him to often. But when it came to Har Sinai, he came down from all of his rikios, all of his firmaments, and he came down and he rested the Shekhinah on Har Sinai. That's an amazing, amazing thing, says Moshe Rabbeinu. That's not something that happens on an everyday basis. It was miyuchad, unique and special to Har Sinai. And I myself was beckoned by HaKadosh Baruch Hu to come to the mountaintop. And I went up, Arboim Yom v'Arboim Laila. I went up 40 days and 40 nights. I didn't eat, says the pasuk. I did not sleep, says the pasuk. I did not drink, says the pasuk. I just stood there for 40 days and 40 nights communing with the Ribbono Shel Olam. He was teaching me all of the Torah. I was l'mayla min hateva, above laws of nature. I was living in the heavens together with the malachim, with the angels. The angels were uncomfortable with my presence. They didn't know what I was doing up there. And I fought against the angels as well. And I told them why we need Torah. You're angels. You don't have Yetzaharas. You're angels. You don't have parents. You're angels. You weren't trapped in Mitzrayim and came out free and alive, and therefore you have an obligation of Pesach to eat matzah. You're malachim. You're the angels. You're not us. Torah was niten la'adam. It was given down here in this world to mankind. We are the ones who require the Torah to know how to live our lives. What an important message before we come to Shavuos. Torah is not just a nice thing. It's not just, well, I'll be better. I'll be a better person if I have Torah. It's true you'll be a better person with Torah. And it's true you'll be a nicer person with Torah. And it's true that you'll be more elevated and more spiritual. All of that is true. But you'll be the person you're supposed to be if a person has Torah in their lives, because the Torah is the conduit that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has brought to this world, that is the connection to our neshamas. And once that we are connected to the Tselem Elokim inside of ourselves, then you can connect to the real Elokim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not the Tselem, not the image, but the actual HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. Without Torah, there is no connection. People run around the world, they don't believe in Hashem, or they claim not to believe in Hashem, or they waver in their emunah. The question is not where is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the question, where are you? You are living a life that is so cut off from the Ribono Shel Olam. You are living a life that has no connection at all to Hashem's wisdom, His Torah. Remember, we mentioned it in last night's shir as well. The Torah is, as the Maharal writes, is Seichel Elokis. It is the godly mind of Hashem. It's His wisdom. It's His seichel, His logic, everything that goes on up there. That is what Torah is. If you are connected to Torah, then you are connected automatically to Hashem. And therefore your emunah will increase, your bitachon will increase, your desire to do mitzvahs will increase, your kedusha will increase, your wanting to become a better person in the eyes of Hashem, that will increase. Everything will raise up. But a person who doesn't have Torah, a person who's cut off from Torah, not only is he cut off from Yiddishkeit, if you don't have Torah, you're cut off from Yiddishkeit, but a person who doesn't have Torah, he's cut off from himself, and he's of course cut off from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and then they will go through life, well, where's Hashem? I don't see Him in my life. Oh, you see all these tzaddikim in Meron. Listen to these stories that are coming out day in and day out of the tzaddikim and their families that are left to deal in the aftermath. Their amunah is so pure and it is so strong. And they are so committed to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, makabel everything. They receive and accept everything on themselves. No complaints. Yes, it's hard and it's painful and it hurts. And they know that the son is never going to be sleeping in their house again. They know all of that. But the Yidden, the Torah Yidden, and a Yid that has Torah, he has a connection to his neshama. And if a person has a connection to the neshama, they have a connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And you have a connection to Hashem, then you're in His world. His world is kol the Ovid Rachmana L'tav Ovid, that everything Hashem does is for the good. We don't see it all, but we know it, we believe it, we trust in you, Hashem. A person who believes in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they have that emunah that's coursing through their veins. They can go through any situation in their life, as we are seeing unfolding in front of us right now, with the godless, the greatness of all of these families. You don't have Torah? You have none of that. You have none of that. There's so many stories of Chiloni, secular Israelis who have been so moved by the events of Meron, and they feel so much pain, they feel so connected to these families who have lost loved ones, that many, many, many secular Israelis, they've been going to the Shiva houses to pay Shiva calls, to see these families, to let them know that they support them. And one of these Chiloni Legamre Israelis from Tel Aviv wrote a letter to the public. And when he was in the house of one of the families sitting Shiva, for I think it was a young father, if I'm not mistaken, maybe it was one of the boys. And he comes to the house and he sees the greatness of these people. He sees the father, the mother, their warmth, their amunah, how they accepted him in immediately, and they put him right next to him and they were talking with him, beautiful words of encouragement and thanking this boy for coming in. They know that he's not a Haredi like everybody else in the room, and so it must be uncomfortable, but you came for us. How much it means to us that you are here. He writes in the letter, I wish that these are the religious people that I would have known all of my life. I wish I would have realized that this is what religious people are like. He grew up secular Tel Aviv. There's an anti-religious fervor that's in the society from the time that they are children. They're taught to believe that religion is archaic and it's ridiculous and it's shtiyot, as they learn. God forbid such a thing. They don't learn how to say Shema. They don't learn about Shabbos. They don't learn about Tefillin. Bar mitzvahs sometimes don't even exist. I met an Israeli Baal Tshuva. He was a young boy growing up in Eretz Yisrael. He said his father refused to give him a bar mitzvah. Nothing doing, he said. We have no shaykhis, nothing to do with Yiddishkeit. Says the Torah over here. But if you have a connection to Yiddish, you have a connection to Torah, you have a connection to yourself, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then you'll be able to elevate, then you'll be able to lift yourself up, then you'll be able to have this inner connection, this deep spiritual bond between you and Hashem. But if you're Am Kshei Orev, says Moshe Rabbeinu, if you're the stubborn nation who refuses to accept the yoke of mitzvahs on yourself the proper way, you refuse to let Torah envelop you. It's not that you're going to decide how much Torah, you have to let yourself be enveloped by the world of Torah. If you refuse that, says Moshe Rabbeinu, which you did many, many times in the Midbar, and Hashem chastised you every single time. He gave you musar, He punished you, there was deaths, there was hardships. And you didn't learn your lesson. You didn't learn your lesson, and the starting point of it all, says the Torah, was right after Maimon Sinai. They were on the highest level of the Jewish people. Our sages tell us they went back to the spiritual levels of Adam Arishon before the Chet. Adam, the man who was the handpiece, the handiwork of Hashem. He was a neshama that was from here all the way up into the heavens. When the angels saw Adam Arishon, they started bowing down and praying to him because they thought that he was God. And Hashem said, no, I'm the Rebbeinu Shalom. This is man. He's called B'Tselem Elokim. You see the godliness that is inside of him, but I'm the Rebbeinu Shalom. So Adam Arishon was on the loftiest of all levels, purest of the pure. His mind penetrated everything in the world. He saw everything either as toiv, v'ra, good and bad, or as emes, v'sheker, truth and false. He knew exactly what to do. Once that he was a chayta, once that he sinned, he ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, so things changed inside him. We're going to speak about that probably at another time. Klal Yisrael comes to Har Sinai. And they've been working for the last 49 days since they left Egypt. They've been working on cleansing themselves from all the impurities of the 210 years of slavery, of assimilation, of being immersed in the Egyptian culture. The Torah tells us, a person is not allowed to go in the ways of the goyim, of the non-Jewish world. We're not supposed to dress like them. We're not supposed to be listening to their music. We're not supposed to read their books. We're not supposed to do the things that the goyish Welt, that the non-Jewish world does. Because if we do, it detonates inside of us our inner connection to ourselves and to the pride and the joy that we have in being a Yid, because being a Jew is different than any other nation in the world. The Jewish people, at the time of their immersion in the Egyptian culture, they were Seilechu b'chukas hagoyim. They went in the ways of the goyim day and night. The Rambam explains to us that they even reverted to Avodah Zarah. They were worshiping idols. Anybody that's ever studied Greek, Egyptian history knows the Egyptians were one of the most black, magical, religious nations that ever existed. They were extremely into their religion, as wild as it might sound to anyone, what the things that they did, how they did, and the like. They believed in this world, they believed in the world to come, they believed in some kind of reward that's going to be there. Whatever you have in this world, you can take it with you. They believed in many things, that gods galore, it's different gods for different things, combination of gods, all wild things that were going on over there. Wild things. And the Jewish people became assimilated. That means that they were entrenched in the chukas hagoyim, in the ways of the non-Jews, in the ways of the Mitzrim. They believed in what they believed in. They were going to their parties. They were hanging out in their clubs. They were watching their YouTube videos to entertain them. They were totally entrenched in that life. And then one day the Melech of Mitzrayim, the king Paro, dies, and the Jewish people have a moment of truth. And they let out an Oy vey Hashem. Where did that come from? You're going bechukas hagoyim, you're living like a non-Jew, like a Mitzri. Where'd that come? Because there's something inside every single Jew is called the Pintel Yid. It is that spark of the Jew that never will be extinguished completely. The embers might be burning very, very, very low. It might be covered up from 210 years of assimilation and slavery and involvement in Egyptian culture. But it's down there. It's called Tselem Elokim. And sometimes there will be a significant event that will take place in a person's life, and suddenly it's like the bellows come to open the fire, whoo, and that spark shoots out. And Klal Yisrael shot out this spark, please Hashem, save us. And Hashem said, oh, you're still Yidden. You didn't forget about me after all of this. After everything that you've gone through, all the chukas hagoyim, all of the tumah, everything, there's still a Yid that cries out for my help. Says Hashem, okay, I'm going to save you. So now what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? He brings the 10 Makkos, one plague after the other, 1 month cycles each one. It was to destroy Mitzrayim, but more importantly, it was to teach Klal Yisrael there's a Ribbono Shel Olam. He created the world. He knows what's going on in the world. He's running the world. He's involved in your life. He can manipulate Teva, nature, when he wants to. It's all Hashem. So by the end of that 10 months, or maybe a little bit extra, that year of the Makkos, Klal Yisrael was on a level where the Amunah began to restore to them. They were no longer learning from the Mitzrim. They were watching the Egyptians get destroyed. They weren't hanging out in their clubs and their pubs anymore. They weren't going to their sporting events, and they weren't watching movies in THX surround sound with 4D blowing in their ear. They didn't have any of that anymore. They were in a school. They were in an environment. They were in the Beis HaMidrash of Amunah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was teaching them and showing them and elevating them every single step of the way to let them know what it means to be a Yid. And then they come out of Mitzrayim in the most miraculous of ways. They go through the Kriyas Yam Suf, the sea splits, closes in on the enemies, and they watch all of Mitzrayim drown in front of their very own eyes, and they realize, oh, Yoshi, we have to sing a great song to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for the miracles that He has done for us. We cannot control our elation that we are the nation that was chosen to follow Hashem into the wilderness. But as we know from the Torah, and from this time of the year, this is the Sfiras HaOmer, where we are Svartim Lechem, we're counting every single day. And every single day that we are counting is another day of elevation, another day of elevation, another day of elevation. And the days of elevation are for what? Are to cleanse out the impurities of Mitzrayim that were there still inside the Jewish people. If you're assimilated for 210 years, it doesn't just go away like that. It's still lodged away inside of you. There's a beautiful story. I'm sure that I told it before. I know that I told it before. There was a Rosh Hashiva in Eretz Yisrael who himself was a Baal Tshuva, and he went on to become an amazing, amazing Talmid Chacham. And he married into a prestigious family, and they had a yeshiva. The father-in-law had a yeshiva, and his son-in-law became the head Rebbe there in the yeshiva. And one day, this Rosh Hashiva was standing by a bus stop in Yerushalayim. And if anybody could picture the streets of Jerusalem right now, you know that there's bus stops lining up the streets, and there's usually many stores all along the strip over there behind them. And sometimes those stores have speakers that are blasting music. And sure enough, as the Rosh Hashiva is waiting for a bus to come, so the store behind him is playing some classic rock and roll music. Now this Rosh Hashiva grew up he was from the hippie generation until he became a Baal Tshuva. And one of the old nigunim from his past is playing in the background. And the next thing he looks, he sees that he looks down, he sees his foot is tapping along to the beat. And he is horrified. I'm a Rosh Hashiva. I'm a Talmid Chacham. I became a Baal Tshuva many years ago. I have not listened to this music in who knows how long, 20 years of my life. I listen to Devekis, I listen to Avram Fried, I listen to Mordechai. I don't listen to this anymore. And yet, with all that I've accomplished, with all that I've done, how far I've come, obviously this music is still inside of me, because here I am tapping my foot to the beat as I'm standing waiting for the bus. He gets a little bit of a panic attack. He can't believe such a thing. He just can't believe he's on that level, or on that low level. So he gets on the bus and he heads straight to the house, the apartment of Rav Scheinberg. Rav Scheinberg was at that time one of the Gedolei Hador, the leaders of the generation. And he was beloved by everybody, but especially Americans, because he was an American boy, born and bred. And he was easy to talk to, and he understood the language, and he understood the American people. And so this Rosh Hashiva got on a bus, and he went straight to Rav Scheinberg's house. And he walks into Rav Scheinberg, and he comes in distraught, and he tells him the story. And Rav Scheinberg chuckles a little bit, and he said, I'll tell you a story. I grew up in America. I grew up in New York. When I was growing up, baseball, that was the big thing. And the Yankees, yes, they were my favorite team. And when I was growing up, I was a Yankees fan. And obviously, at a certain point, I made a break from sports. I went into my learning and became who he was. And it's been years and years and years and years and years since I followed a single sports game, since I caught up on the Yankees where they're holding, or I even watched to see what's going on. He said, some time ago I was in America on a fundraising trip, and I was staying in somebody's house, and as I'm walking down the hallway, there's a coffee table, and on the coffee table is a newspaper. And I glanced down at the front cover of the newspaper, and right there on the front it says, Yankees lose the pennant. And I went like this. Oy. I actually groaned that the Yankees lost the pennant. And he looks at this Rosh Hashiva. Now, if anybody ever saw Rav Scheinberg, he would wear 100 pairs of tzitzis. Tefillin was on his head. There was like a light of Shechina that was radiating him. The air in his house was thick with Kedusha. And he looks at this Rosh Hashiva and he says, do you understand what that means? He said, for so many years, I didn't think about baseball. I didn't look at it. I didn't care about it. But the moment that I see something from my childhood, they lost the pennant. He said, the message is that you can take the baseball out of your head, but you can't take your head out of, you can take your head out of baseball, but you cannot take the baseball out of your head. So he told this Rosh Hashiva, you can take your head out of the music, you can put it in the Beis HaMidrash, you can study, you can learn, you can become a great Talmid Chacham in Rosh Hashiva. But it's deep lodged inside of there, and it might never get out and never truly escape. So don't worry, you're going to be okay. And this, just to end the story, Rav Scheinberg one day decided he's going to make a Kiddush on Shabbos. And nobody knew. It was a birthday, it was a family simcha. He said, it's a chasana, what are you making the Kiddush for? He said, I had a very big simcha this week. He said, I found out that the Yankees lost the pennant, and it didn't bother me at all. Which means that Rav Scheinberg on his madrega, not only did he take his head out of the baseball, but he took all the baseball out of his head as well. So Klal Yisrael is coming from Mitzrayim, 210 years of assimilation, 210 years of Tumah, 210 years of Seilech, B'chukas HaGoyim, they're going in the ways of the non-Jews. They're entrenched in their Avodah Zarah, in their idol worship. They're entrenched in their impurities. They don't believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They come out of Mitzrayim now, and they must make themselves vessels that will be worthy of receiving the Torah at Har Sinai. How are they going to do that? Says Hashem, I'm giving you a mitzvah sfira sa'omer. And every day that you are going to count this sfira, every day you will work on yourself, day in and day out, you'll elevate yourself, you'll extricate from yourself the impurities, and by the time that you get to Har Sinai, you'll be ready To stand there on a level of Kedusha that no one has known since Adam Arishon did his original Chet. And then I'm going to give you the Torah, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So every single day of Sfiras HaOmer was elevating and elevating and elevating and elevating. Until we get to the point where the Malachim themselves don't know what to do with us because the levels of Kedusha that we achieved. I think that it's the Ran writes that in order for Klal Yisrael to be able to receive the Torah, so as we pointed out previously, there was a mass revelation which no other nation ever received before. They must be on a level of Nevuah, prophecy like Moshe Rabbeinu, to be able to receive the Torah like Moshe. So they were lifted up above and beyond the 49th level where they were holding, even higher, to be able to receive the Torah on the deepest levels of Nevuah, of prophecy, that a nation ever knew before. And that's where Klal Yisrael is holding. And then they pass out, they die by the first of the Yisrael Hadibros. HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings the tal, he brings the dew that's reserved for Techias HaMesim, he brings them back to life. They die by the second of the Yisrael Hadibros, Pachai Nishmasa, and the Neshamas left them. HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings down some more dew for Techias HaMesim and revives them and brings them back to life. And then Klal Yisrael says, Moshe Rabbeinu, listen, we're not so sure that we're going to make it back to life every single time that Hashem speaks to us. You go get the luchais, you bring down the Torah and tell us everything else that it says inside. So Klal Yisrael now is standing by the foot of the mountain. Could you imagine what it felt like by the foot of that mountain? Could you imagine, when you go to the Kaisel, you ever go to the Kaisel like at night? It's like midnight, and there's like that mystical aura by the Kaisel, and you see some people standing over here, and this one's by the wall, and he's crying his eyes out, and these people over here, and they're learning a little bit, and this one is over there, and he's singing a niggin, and you see that the air is so mystical and so pure at that moment, you just want to stay there for the rest of your life. You never want to leave the Kaisel. Could you imagine what it was like at Har Sinai at that moment? Could you imagine the air? Could you imagine the sanctity? We're talking about people that heard the voice of Hashem and they died and they were brought back to life. Techias HaMesim. It's not an out-of-body experience. It is literally they were given back their lives. The mountain was still probably trembling and rumbling from all of the excitement of Har Sinai. The Kedusha, the Shechina that was there, could you just imagine? And Klal Yisrael just has to wait 40 days. Moshe Rabbeinu is going to go. He's going to ascend into the heavens. He's going to speak panim al panim, face to face with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he's going to then come back down and give us all of the details and the mitzvahs of the Torah that we were not able to hear directly from Hashem at Har Sinai because our neshamas could not handle the intensity. That's the madrega, that's the place that Klal Yisrael is on right now. The highest of the heights, the level of Adam Arishon. Adam Arishon made no mistakes. When he was born, he saw everything so clear. He understood what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. There's no suffix, there's no doubt in his mind that he's going to do the right thing. How did he do the sin? We'll discuss it. But Adam Arishon was on that loftiest of greatest spiritual levels of anybody. Klal Yisrael was restored. It says that the Malachim came down and they gave them 2 crowns on their head. One for Naseh and one for Nishma. We will do. And then we will hear, we will learn. A crown is always symbolic. I believe the Maharal writes, a crown is always symbolic. It's on top of that and it's going up, right? It's always pointing up. The crown it was the crowning moment in Klal Yisrael's existence over here, that they were crowned up and they were moving on the up and up and up. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu's plans for this nation were enormous. They're going to receive the Torah and walk into Eretz Yisrael, build a Beis HaMikdash, and they're going to live happily ever after. But Klal Yisrael, says Moshe Rabbeinu, you are an Am Kshei Arif, you are stubborn. And you are obstinate, and you don't have patience, and you are impulsive, and you don't weigh out your decisions before you do them. You don't stop to think, what are we doing right now? Shall we actually make a golden calf over here? Shall we take all of our gold and dedicate it to the pyre so that it will burn in the fire and then turn into molten gold, and then they can shape whatever they want? Should we actually do such things? Did you think about that? You're impulsive, and you have no patience, and therefore you do and you do and you do without thinking. That is the punishment that Klal Yisrael is going to receive over here, because when you are this obstinate nation, kshei oiref, your neck is stiff necks. Anybody wakes up in the morning, they feel good when they have a stiff neck? You know, you wake up, and says, I can't move my head. Why not? Because you have a stiff neck. Does anybody ever feel good with a stiff neck? No. Because a stiff neck is a ganai. It is a way that the Torah is telling over here, there's something wrong with you, Klal Yisrael. You have the ability over here to be a nation that receives HaKadosh Baruch Hu's brachas. You could just receive so easily. He'll just put his yoke right on your neck and you'll take it so nicely. No, but you're stiff-necked. You have to go to the chiropractor. Who's the chiropractor? HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What does he do? He gives us patch. He gives us consequence. He gives us results that are going to take place because of the things that we have done with ourselves. And says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, says Moshe is talking on behalf of Hashem. He says, I don't understand what you did. B'chayrev hiktzaftem es Hashem. Standing by the foot of the mountain over there when you should have just waited patiently, you angered HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You started up with, you provoked Hashem. He says, I went up to the mountain to receive the tablets that HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself, these godly tablets that he was going to give to us. I remained there 40 days and 40 nights. I did not eat any bread. I didn't drink any water. And then the reward for those 40 days and 40 nights was HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave me the 2 stones, the tablets of glory. Says the pasuk, Suvim be'etzba Elokim, they were written with God's finger. Everything we discussed at Mount Sinai was there on those tablets. There was fire on the mountain, there was Navu on the mountain, it was all there. You know what it was like. And it was all in the luchais, all in the tablets. Says the Gemara, says the Torah, at the end of the 40 days and 40 nights, Hashem gave me these tablets. I'm holding in my hands right now the most pristine object in the entire world. It is the Torah Kadosha that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was waiting to bestow upon the Jewish people for over 2,000 years from the beginning of time. They were the tablets that he himself, psal, that he carved out. It was with his writing inside. It's all mine right now to come and give it to you. But what happened? Vayomer Hashem Elai. Hashem suddenly says to me the following words. Kum reid maher. Go quickly from this mountain, Mizeh. Ki shiches amcha she'otzeisam mitzrayim. Your nation has defiled itself. Soru maher min aderech she'tzivisam asulem masecha. And they have been soru. They turned away from the derech, from the path that I have shown in front of them when I took them out of Mitzrayim, that I commanded them to be one with me, to believe only in me, not to make any images. Asulem masecha, and they made a graven image. Can you explain that? Can you explain how the nation that saw HaKadosh Baruch Hu destroy all of the idols and all of the gods and all the people in Egypt? Can you explain how they heard the words, I'm the only God, don't make any graven images? Can you explain that they made a masecha, they made a graven image over here? I saw this nation and they're stubborn. I gave them everything and they continue to sin. Does that make any sense? Heref mimeni v'ashmidem, I want to destroy them. Ve'emche shma mitachas l'shmaim, I'll wipe out their name, says Hashem. Ve'efim ve'erim in ahar. So Moshe Rabbeinu got very nervous. He runs down from the mountain. I don't know if he got nervous, but he realized the severity of the situation. He begins running down the mountain. The mountain is still engulfed in flames. You know the kedusha that was there. And he saw, you sinned against HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You made a graven image of a cow, a calf. That's what you traded Hashem for. You so quickly, you left the ways. And I took the luchos and I smashed them on the ground. And I said that it's impossible that the nation that is standing here by Sinai to receive the Torah, it is impossible that this nation that wants to cleave to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, wants to have what is right, wants all of that. How can you be privy to have these luchas, have these tablets in your hand? And HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him, as we mentioned, Yasher Kaichacha Moshe Rabbeinu, you did the right thing. This stubborn nation, they don't deserve my luchas. They don't deserve the Torah. They can't even uphold number 1 and number 2. How are they going to uphold the other 611 mitzvahs that there are in the Torah? We're going to leave off with these questions. And we're going to return after Shavuos, after you have a whole Yom Tiv of getting engaged in Torah, of getting closer to the Torah, of being people that appreciate the Torah more and recognize that it is central to our existence. Let's think a little bit about this idea that if in fact we are the Am Kshei Oref, if we are stubborn when it comes to accepting Torah upon ourselves, then we will continually make mistakes again and again and again because we just don't understand how to embrace. We're just always pushing. We can't do that. So we're leaving off, how did Klal Yisrael do this? How did they go from the highest spiritual heights in the world that they were, like Adam Arishon before the Chet, that the Malachim themselves were in shock when they saw them? How did they do that? And suddenly 40 days later, while the mountain is still engulfed in flames, the Kedusha is still there, the strength of the Shekhinah is still there. How did they make such an epic mistake? This is a colossal failure, that they actually made an idol, and they made a calf of everything, a cow, a little baby cow. That is supposed to be the new God that's going to take them. What exactly is going on in this story? Be'ez Hashem, next week, again after we're inspired, Emir Hashem, by Shavuos, we'll come back and we will try to go into detail what was actually taking place by the Chet HaEgel, so we could understand the mistakes that were made, and we'll have to see if Klal Yisrael is as culpable as the black and white verses appear to be in here, or maybe we'll find a way to be dan l'chavschos. We'll find some way to judge a bit favorably the Jewish people, and perhaps maybe that will be the reason why at the end of the day, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, He changed His mind. He didn't destroy us. He didn't wipe us out. He allowed us to do tshuva and to live and to remain and to embrace Torah in the right way. And Be'ez Hashem, we'll see that next week, and we'll go into Yom Tiv knowing that try not to be so stubborn. Just accept the sovereignty of Hashem, accept the glory of His Torah, the nobility of the Kedusha of Am Yisrael, and in that zechus, Be'ez Hashem, will be zeichet to what we call an emes Kabbalah Torah, a true receiving of the Torah in our lives, and in that way, we will make a great tikkun, we'll make a great fixing, and add so much to Klal Yisrael, who needs so much added protection and bracha right now at this time in our history. Have a wonderful Shabbos and a wonderful Yom Tov, everyone.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome.
Good Shabbos and good Yom Tov.
Shabbos, good Yom Tov, everyone. All the best.